Donald Trump is currently issuing a massive warning about Bitcoin. Folks, warning. This warning goes out to Russia, to China, to all BRICS nations that are using any currency other than the US dollar. And so, folks, to those who are using Bitcoin here, if Russia is using Bitcoin here, if China is using Bitcoin, or if they're of course setting up their own payment systems here, he is now threatening 100% tariffs. He has said it before. He's really tightened it up and repeated the whole thing again. He says here, I quote, "We will demand from these seemingly hostile countries that they create either a new BRICS currency, support any other currency that is supposed to replace the mighty US dollar." And now the question is whether Bitcoin is actually what he means here. Because, okay, BRICS currency, he's obviously not talking about that. Bitcoin, what he means is, if they're basically building their own BRICS currency or something like that, a separate payment system. Somehow, I don't know, a gold-backed BRICS currency, where there are also considerations. That's basically what he means. But he also says, we demand that they do not support any other currencies here. And Bitcoin is basically an alternative currency. I mean, some people would also say it's not a currency because it's issued by a state. That's basically a question of definition, whether Bitcoin is seen as a currency by Donald Trump. But I can definitely imagine that Donald Trump actually sees Bitcoin as a currency or at least as an alternative. And then that would definitely be a total bombshell. That means Donald Trump wants everything to happen in dollars. He's obviously filling his pockets with Bitcoin here, setting up a strategic Bitcoin reserve, buying Bitcoin himself. But if other people, for example, use Bitcoin to bypass international trade in various commodities and so on, that you basically go in with dollars and then do it in Bitcoin, then that obviously raises some critical points. So we have two options now. That could happen here. Option one that we're looking at. He really sees it as an attack. If Russia, China, and so on use Bitcoin here, that would be the ultimate shocker. Or option two, he doesn't see it as an attack. But that means that Russia, China, and so on, the BRICS nations, if they don't want to get into conflict with Donald Trump, then they have to use Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is not seen as an alternative currency by Donald Trump. If you build your own currency system, your own BRICS currency coin or something like that, if you use that, then you're going to get massively canceled by Donald Trump. And then you basically have to build on Bitcoin. So we have option one, massive potential for conflict. Option two, a massive driver for Bitcoin. And we're going to take a look at these two options. Also, we have a super interesting statement from Elon Musk, which is also important for Bitcoin, that he has just met. But first, we're going to take a close look at Donald Trump's statements, because a lot of people still don't get it right now. They're totally sleeping on what's going on here. Now someone is even saying that Donald Trump has just ended the BRICS nations. So he's saying that the BRICS nations are basically being made redundant now. He promises 100% tariffs if they give up the US dollar. How much would that be? The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and so on. Probably even BRICS Plus here, and the United Arab Emirates. How much would that cost these countries per year? And someone here writes that the estimated amount is $1.6 trillion per year. And of course, he assumes that the BRICS nations will let themselves be blackmailed. You can't just look at it that way, because they're definitely going to strike back here. It could also simply be that there's just a bipolar world. On one side, the countries that are increasingly leaning towards the BRICS. And on the other side, the countries that are increasingly leaning towards the USA. And then there's basically no more trading here, in between. So Donald Trump is now really, let's say, speaking his mind and saying, hey guys, if you want to get out of the US dollar, if you're doing your own thing, if you're doing BRICS stuff, if you're setting up your own currency systems, or maybe even if I use Bitcoin here, hey, I really don't like that. You guys need to use the dollar. The dollar is the absolute ultimate. We now also think that the dollar will become even more relevant with Bitcoin. We are still making stablecoins so that even more people can get US dollars, but only we have the privilege of using Bitcoin here. Only we have the privilege to use cryptocurrencies or something like that. If you do that, then that's obviously really bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be that strict. It could just be that it looks that way. If you're basically using other fiat currencies here. That's the big question now. Whether you just mean fiat currencies here or if you also mean cryptocurrencies. But it's really crazy what's going on right now. We're really seeing the beginning here. or we're actually already right in the middle of a currency war. So we don't have a physical war, or we still have physical battlefields, but not a world war or anything like that. But this is already kind of a world war on a monetary policy level. And you really have to take that in. That we're fully in it. Donald Trump is making some serious warnings here. We haven't seen warnings like this in a long, long time. And I'm really curious about that too. How Putin stands on this, and how China stands on this. Putin is already saying, hey, you can't stop Bitcoin. And we now use Bitcoin, basically here for any settlement stuff. The finance minister in Russia also made a statement that this is already happening in Russia. That Bitcoin is being used for international trade. Putin is also saying on the other side, he would like to use the US dollar, but he would basically be sanctioned. He would basically be excluded from the US dollar system. His assets would be frozen and stuff like that. So it's kind of paradoxical what's being said here. On one hand, they're basically freezing the Russians' assets. And so on, he's sanctioning them. On the other hand, they're telling him, but if you don't use the US dollar, then you have to expect some consequences. So, Putin really said it in a speech. About a month ago or so, he said it again. He was actually open to using the US dollar and everything, but the situation looks like he can't use the US dollar freely anymore. That's why he's basically pushed to build alternatives. There's the BRICS alternative, where they're building their own currency or creating alternative payment systems. Or that experiments are now being done with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. But it seems Donald Trump isn't too happy about this either. I'm reading you the entire tweet from Donald Trump so you can get an idea. How crazy. Because these demands and these words from him are. He's saying here, the idea that the BRICS countries are trying to break away from the dollar, while we just watch, is over. So it's clear, he's even emphasizing the over. So he's writing over or done really big here. All the words are written normally, except that over is really emphasized here. So it looks like he's not interested. That here, there's an alternative to the US dollar. So basically, that's always the thing. You want to, let's say, diversify your options. You don't want to be dependent on anything, right? Even with Bitcoin, it's the same thing. You want to be independent from all kinds of stuff and so on. But now Donald Trump wants to make other countries dependent. That's also how the US dollar has benefited for a really long time. So there's always the seigniorage effect, meaning that US dollars could be printed. Donald Trump could print his own US dollars. Now, to put it simply, and other nations had to work for these US dollars. And because the USA has the largest currency area, the USA received the largest seniority gain here. So basically, they could benefit the most from the redistribution of purchasing power. And that's how the US has also become the most powerful nation in the world. Not because they were the greatest people. Maybe they still were. I don't know. But mainly because they had the money monopoly here. And that money monopoly has been increasingly shaky in recent years. Other countries have been dumping US government bonds. The US dollar isn't being used as much in international trade anymore. And Donald Trump wants to turn that around again. He wants to make the dollar the absolute #1 currency again. And he wants to achieve that through tariffs. He wants to create that through massive pressure. He wants to create that through statements like this, that he's scaring people, that he really says, hey, let's get real here. And that's how it looks. And maybe you can also incorporate Bitcoin into this strategy. Because I've said it before, if the US dollar is backed by Bitcoin, there will be even more trust in the US dollar. Michael Saylor says the same thing, that if the US dollar is strengthened by Bitcoin, then most of the capital will flow back into the dollar. That's the dollar milkshake theory, where all the capital will basically accumulate in the best, the strongest fiat currency. That will strengthen the dollar. That will obviously pump Bitcoin up, because then there will naturally be more demand for it. Bitcoin exists, and additionally, the dollar can also be further rolled out through stablecoins. And if, for example, Tether even runs the USDT stablecoin on Lightning, and if that's merged with Bitcoin, then we have a really, really big symbiosis. And then if it happens that Donald Trump even reserves the right, here, using Bitcoin, here for international trade, but other people aren't allowed to use it, because they have to use the dollar. That would be totally awesome. Maybe the other countries could use it as value storage. But if you use it here for international settlements, then you get that from Donald Trump. 100% tariffs. But that's just the US perspective. Will they actually go along with it? That's the other question. Then Donald Trump continues in this tweet. We will demand from these seemingly hostile countries that they will either create a new BRICS currency, support another currency that is supposed to replace the mighty US dollar. Otherwise, they'll have to deal with 100% tariffs and prepare for that. Saying goodbye to the wonderful US market. So not just tariffs, but in general, there would be an embargo or something like that. You can find yourself another loser nation. There's no chance that BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade or anywhere else. And every country that tries this should say hello to tariffs and goodbye to America. So, I think you can't put it any clearer than that. That's really something else. And we need to pay attention. You really have to look closely, because people can now say, hey, that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Yes, it has a lot to do with Bitcoin. The development of the dollar, the strength of the dollar has a lot to do with Bitcoin. When the dollar is very strong. Historically, when the dollar was weak, Bitcoin was relatively strong. And when the dollar was strong, Bitcoin was rather weak. That's why a strong dollar isn't really good for Bitcoin. Except, of course, that's changing now because the dollar is being supported by Bitcoin. Then that could actually change here. That a strong dollar might actually be good for Bitcoin. So we really need to keep a close eye on this. And now, really important for you guys, there's currently the TREZOR Freedom promotion going on, with 2,100 limited Freedom editions available. Right now, TREZOR has this super cool limited edition hardware wallet. If you want to grab this, I'll put a link down below. With the code BITCOINHOTO, you also get an extra 10% off the discount. You definitely should jump on this. Because probably in the next 1-3 days, the wallets will be gone. The site already crashed. On the first day, now the site is back online. Have no idea, no panic. If you have orders in here, then check again to see if they went through, because the site crashed. That everything is really on the safe side here. So definitely check out TREZOR. I highly recommend it. Then you have a hardware wallet, so you're safe from thieves, hackers, attacks, and all that. And now we have a new statement from Elon Musk, which I found very, very interesting, because it also has something to do with Bitcoin indirectly.
Inflation in TREZOR has been used as a warning sign. And removed, so people don't feel it directly. They sort of. And the politicians will try to blame it on something else. It's all about government spend.
Elon Musk basically says that inflation is a hidden tax, because it's always about the government. And now, what have we just looked at? That basically means the USA is spreading this inflation all over the world. That means the USA has the largest currency area, and we remember that Donald Trump now wants tariffs here. He's trying to force people to stick with the dollar. That also means he wants to force people to have this inflating money. And when you take a look at Elon Musk's statements here, Donald Trump also wants to force people to pay an invisible tax. And that's just crazy. Elon Musk is doing some awareness work here. He says, hey folks, this is a hidden tax. It's all about government spending. They're messing with you, the government is messing with you, they're pulling the money right out of your pockets. Elon Musk is raising awareness with the Department of Government Efficiency. And Donald Trump is forcing people to stay in this inflationary system. And he's forcing more and more countries to do the same. He says, hey folks, you now have inflating money. But if you want to avoid it, things will get even worse for you, because then I'll impose tariffs, and I'll just cut you off from international trade. Then goods, raw materials will get more expensive. And that is ultimately the perverse world when people now want to build alternatives here. If you want inflation-free money, if you want Bitcoin, or if you want to set up your own payment infrastructure, if you want to be independent, then Donald Trump comes in and says, hey folks, everything's great. We're the land of the free, but only as long as we're in charge and have the say-so. And if you want to do other things here, then you're really in trouble. And then you're really in it. And that's basically the perversion we're stuck in. So yeah, a lot of people are saying the freedom virus is coming with Donald Trump, and that's true. We're seeing a lot of libertarian trends, and now Bitcoin is coming into play. And that's all well and good. But you have to be fair here, I'd say. That Donald Trump is not somehow advocating for free markets, but it is the end result here. It's pure socialism, forcing people to stick with the dollar. We don't have any real currency competition. And if we don't have free currency competition, then we don't have a free economy, then we don't have free markets. You always have to keep that in mind, that this is basically an absolute socialist move. What Donald Trump is doing here, even though I find it very, very interesting and sometimes really cool, how he's basically shrinking the state. But He's basically doing an America First policy. He's only doing things that are good for America. So in America, he's introducing freer markets, but at the expense of third world countries. And that is the fatal thing that here too, for centuries. Now, through fiat money, through inflation, through the seniority effect, third world countries, emerging markets and so on, countries that depend on the dollar, have basically pulled out on a massive scale, basically taking every last cent out of people's pockets. And you really have to be very, very critical of that. So definitely get into Bitcoin. I'm putting a link down here where you can easily buy Bitcoin at 21 Bitcoin. Here, with the Bitcoin Hotel, you still get a straightforward 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. And now I have a very important message for you. The launch of the Bitcoin Advantage is getting closer. And what's going on with the waiting list right now exceeds all expectations. Every day, new top people are joining us here who have understood it, how important a strong Bitcoin community is. For everyone who isn't in yet, I'm already sharing initial content from the community every day in the private Telegram group. And I'm providing daily value here, and it's all free of charge. You can easily join by clicking on the link that I have for you below. I'll link it in the comments and in the description, folks. And now let me know what you think about Donald Trump's statements. See you soon. See you later. Peace out.